as I said, talk about making this the best sales year ever. It's brought to you by SalesPOP, online sales magazine, Pipeliner CRM. But I wanted to introduce our guests. In fact, I wanted to let them introduce themselves.
My name is Julie Hansen, and I'm the founder of Performance Sales and Training. And I focus on customer-facing, customer-talking events, whether it's virtual or live, presentations, demos, and work on really helping people have those authentic conversations that are necessary to move the sale forward. So I'm happy to be here with you, John, and James, and Joe. Looks like he's here with us.
Excellent.
Now.
Joe has joined us too. Hey, Joe.
Hi, guys. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep. Yeah, we can hear you. So with James, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself quickly, and then we'll head on to Joe and we'll get started.
Sure. Well, if Julie's the presentation queen, then I'm the closing king, I guess. So I'm James Vieira. I'm the author of The Perfect Close. I am the CEO of Best Practice International, and we specialize in basically focusing on sales leaders and sales reps and making them as good as they can be. So that's the short version, John.
Okay. And Joe?
Well, I guess I'm right in the middle. First of all, sincere apologies for being late. It's certainly not a trait I suggest salespeople have, but I apologize for being late. I'm somewhere in the middle. So we've got presentations, we've got the closing king. I'm all about the sales processes. So I'm a 26-year veteran. My company is Grow Up Sales, and I work predominantly with bankers and insurance people and helping them better engage their prospects and develop more effective strategies for winning new business.
Excellent. And well, I'm the court jester. Hopefully I'll just keep everything moving along and everybody entertained. All right, so we're going to start off with the first question. I get the feeling, and certainly it is from the conversations that I've had, the feeling is that 2018 is looking like it could be a great year for sales. Especially the US, the economy is coming back, the impact of tax legislation, all of that good stuff. So I just wanted to ask each of you, is this an impression you're getting? And if so, why do you think it's going to be a great year for sales? So maybe Julie, you want to kick that off?
Sure. Well, all of the things that you said, the economy, some of the uncertainty, well, in some areas at least, being a little more certain. But I think we've spent a lot of years getting all these new processes, all this automation, all these tools that are supposed to help salespeople be more effective. And I think the last few years have been a little bit more of a learning curve on how to use those, how to integrate them. And I think we're really coming into a time where this automated process should be able to free up salespeople to spend more time on actual selling activities, which is why we all got in sales, right?
Mm-hmm, for sure.
So more of those face-to-face customer interactions, leads that are handled maybe by chatbots and qualified and passed on, so that you're really dealing with more qualified prospects, and you can spend your time tailoring your message and really following up and doing a good, clean sales job instead of this hit or miss and trying to coordinate with your technology and team.
Excellent. Good point. So James, how about you? What do you think? What do you think this year is looking like it could be a good one?
I totally agree with Julie. I think we're heading into the build-out phase here on the technology side. And because of that, there's really never been a better time to be a salesperson than there is right now. I mean, the tools have absolutely never been better. Our understanding of what it takes to succeed has never been better. There's been new discoveries in behavioral science and in messaging and outreach effectiveness and social engagement, and all these areas make it such that if a salesperson is willing to learn and they're willing to add sufficient energy, that they're virtually guaranteed success. And that really wasn't the case in the past. So we've kind of hit this sweet spot, I think, here this year, where we're kind of past all the learning curve of the tools. And as long as we're willing to learn the best practices and apply ourselves, then we've got a very sure path on success.
Excellent. And how about you, Joe? What do you think? Did we lose Joe?
So I agree with Julie. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Maybe
I agree with Julie and James. Great.
Maybe you want to switch your cam off there, Joe, just to help with bandwidth.
Absolutely. So in essence, I agree with Julie and James as far as the sales environment, the selling environment has certainly changed. There's a lot more. There's a lot more tools today to help salespeople, and there's certainly a lot more science and research that's done to help us better engage with our customers. In my opinion, every year is a good year for salespeople. Every year is a good year to salespeople. Buyers buy for two reasons: to acquire pleasure or to avoid problems. And if it's a down year, salespeople should be helping them avoid problems. If it's an up year or a boom year, then they're helping them leverage the great economic opportunities that there are. So if salespeople, to James's point, if salespeople are willing to learn, salespeople are willing to change the way they sell, then this could be an extraordinary year for them based on how the economy is looking.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe. I just realized, actually, here's just an aside, there's Julie, James, Joe, and John. So we're keeping it all nicely synchronized here.
Yes, our parents all named us with starting with the J.
All right, so let's
all the best names start with J.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay, so let's move on and let's talk a little bit now about. I'm a big believer in preparation and planning, and in sales, I think sometimes we don't do enough planning and enough preparation. So what are some ways salespeople could prepare better for this year? Maybe James, you want to kick that off?
Well, I think the data on the whole shows that salespeople actually are terrible planners. So, I think the key there, just to keep the planning part simple, is to identify target accounts, the channels you're going to use to engage them, and all the activities it'll take to hit your goal, and then make those concrete by getting them all the way into your calendar. I think that's where a lot of salespeople actually miss, is they don't actually make all the planning they do concrete into actionable things that happen on a day-to-day basis. But if I had to recommend something in addition to planning, I would say that salespeople need to prepare to become domain experts. The latest data is just showing that customers far prefer speaking to domain experts than to salespeople. Mm-hmm. So be both, right? Become an expert in your industry, and there's some phenomenal tools out there, most of which are free, that salespeople can use to do that. I mean, every salesperson should be using RSS feeders, alerts. They should be tweaking their YouTube recommendations to maximize the domain knowledge that is coming at them and the insight that they have access to, so that they can deliver that with their customers. It's where that knowledge, that sales knowledge that they have, and their domain knowledge intersect. That's where value and insight are created, and that's what the customers are looking for.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, James and I are again singing from the same hymn book, because as I said earlier, I spend a lot of time coaching bankers and people within the financial institutional finance industry, and 99% of them, and that's quite a broad statement for me to be making, but 99% of them don't have documented sales plans. And one of the biggest tips that I can give to any salespeople as they prepare for 2018 and beyond is that stop doing what you've always done, right? It's time to change. If you do what you've always done, you won't get what you've always got. You're going to get less. So it's important now to start developing a sales plan. Kick off the year with a sales plan. We're already into March, or about to be into March. So if they don't have a documented sales plan now, then what activities are they actually focusing on? What specific targets are they focusing on? And I would add to that by saying, once you have a documented sales plan and clearly understand what activities you want to focus on, how are you developing your skills? How are you enhancing your skills to ensure that you can effectively execute those activities? So that's my big tip. Big fan of what James just said, is documented plans, and certainly activity plans that you can build your skills around and hold yourself accountable to.
Excellent. And Julie, what do you think? What are some ways that salespeople could better prepare themselves this year?
Well, I would say this is very topical, because one thing that is really taking place in sales and in many industries is the use of video. Mm-hmm. And so if you've been sitting on the side of the pool, it's time to jump in. Right. And what that means is you have to pass a couple of hurdles. It's interesting. I do training with a lot of technology teams, and many of them do web presentations, web demos. And I would say 97% of them do not use their webcam. They're like, oh no, I can't be on camera. Oh, I don't want people to see me. There's just this, this barrier that is still up with a lot of people. So it's really time to get past that and really find out what you need to know about video, how you can do a better job, and start to get comfortable in front of the camera. And it's not necessarily a natural technique. So, I trained as an actor and I trained for the stage. And that's a completely different technique being live than it is having a camera in your face. Very few people know how to do that naturally. So get the training that you need so you can get over that discomfort around it, because it really is a great way to connect with people today and to set yourself apart and deliver tailored messages in a unique way.
Okay, I think that's a great point, because I think there's so much more selling going on, like over online, like over things like GoToMeet and GoToWeb, all these other tools, and yet there's nobody really being trained or prepared how to do that. We're still very much focused on sales call execution when we're face to face with somebody. So I love that idea of getting comfortable with webcams. Get down to your local improv club, right? And maybe
Exactly.
get yourself comfortable with having to react on the fly, but get yourself comfortable with being on screen with your cam, because it's definitely something that's going to continue.
Right, absolutely. It's not, the genie's not going back in the bottle.
Okay, so let's talk about new habits to develop. Joe, you mentioned, and we'll start with you. You mentioned earlier, if you do things just in the same ways you've always done them, it's not going to get you the same result anymore. So what are some brand new or new habits that salespeople could start to adopt in 2018 that would make life so much better for them?
Well, many of the salespeople, and I'm going to leverage what I was discussing earlier. Many of the salespeople I work with do not have either a specific target market or a activity plan, a documented activity plan. So again, I'm dealing with finance industry professionals or insurance industry professionals. And so the first thing and the big recommendation I've been making, I've been on this bandwagon now for the last 6 months, so coming towards the end of 2017 and turning the corner into 2018, both in the US and in Australia, is strongly recommending to sales people that it's time that you took some time out from just hitting the ground running and trying to achieve your sales targets for another year to reflect upon what are the target industries that can certainly most benefit from your solutions, and how do you engage those target industries, and certainly then developing an activity plan around what are the type of activities you're going to do differently than you've done in previous years. And you're going to leverage some of the same stuff, but instead of just going to the same old networking functions, it's time for you to think about how you can be a more effective networker. So the big tip is document your activity plan, or document your strategy and activity plan. And then secondly, something that a lot of salespeople don't do that I find in my industries is that they don't formally undertake any personal development or personal coaching. They wait for their institution to provide some quarterly training or some lunch and learn. And we all know that that's not the way to develop your skills, behaviors, and beliefs. You do need to be consistently and incrementally coaching your skills. It makes sense in sport. Why shouldn't it make sense in sales? So have a targeted activity plan and proactively develop your skills around those activities, and you'll find that you'll be able to leverage success a lot more quick and easily achieve your annual targets.
Yeah, no, I like that idea a lot. It's a great reminder about investing in yourself. It's one of the things that often fascinates me is people outsource their future to other people too often, and they say like, oh, you do, I'm waiting for you to train me, I'm waiting for you to give me these skills, instead of saying, correct, well, the first place I should start is, why am I waiting? Because at the end of the day, who cares most about my career and my success? It's got to be myself, right? Therefore, I need to be more proactive. So great reminder. All right. What about you, Julie? What about some new habits to develop for 2018? Sorry, just before I do that, if anybody who is any of the audience here, if you have questions, just put them into the question box, and if they're relevant to the section we're in, I'll ask the people immediately. If not, we can ask at the end. But please go ahead and put your questions in the question box. So sorry, Julie. Anyway, going on. What are some habits salespeople should develop for 2018?
Well, I think along the lines of, stop doing what you've always done. I think salespeople need to take a hard look at their presentation structure, their demo structure. They have typically been in this long linear fashion, and that just is not how we communicate today. So you need to look at, review your what you're doing and see if it's designed to incite and invite conversation. Studies show that the more the customer talks, the more likely they are to close the deal with you. And typically the talk-listen ratio is very much skewed towards the salesperson, less the customer. And there was a study done by Gong.io this year that found that the winning talk-to-listen ratio for successful demos was 65% customer, 35% salesperson. And I would say that most presentations, demos I sit through are just the flip end of that. So you have to take a look at what you're doing. How can you structure it in a way that invites conversation? How you can embrace this new conversational presentation idea, because it really does make a difference in the quality and the delivery of your presentations and the success that you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, so that, Julie, that goes back a little bit to what you were talking about when you were talking about being comfortable, on camera, on webcams, and etc. Again, seeing as we're doing a lot of this stuff online now, I think it's certainly my impression that salespeople have started to talk a lot more because of that silence issue, right? When especially you're doing demo online, the silence issue, instead of saying, okay, well, that person needs a little bit of time to consider what I just said, and maybe the best thing is not for me to fill the silence.
Right. I love this statement. I forget who said it. Maybe Einstein or Thomas Edison. Nature abhors a vacuum. And salespeople abhor a vacuum even more. So we will rush in to fill any space. And what you're doing is first of all, you're training your prospect how you expect them to engage. And you're training them not to engage because you're showing them that you will fill those spaces and they don't have to participate. So the more we do virtually, the more important it is to get some skills around that, because again, it's one of those unnatural activities that you're going to be doing a lot of. And it's very important to make those interactive. And it's harder because people get in front of a computer and a screen and they just get very passive. That's how we're trained. That's how we are at movies, television. So you have to break that.
Right. Well, at least I'm pretty sure it wasn't Mr. Dyson who said that. So, sorry, James. What about you? What habits should salespeople start doing and developing for 2018?
Well, we've invested in all these tools, right? So I think it's use the tools that you've got available, the new ones, and then learn the ones you already have. I mean, so back me up on this, John. In my experience, sales reps are barely even aware of half of the capabilities of the systems that they're using, let alone utilizing them. They don't even know that those features exist. And I mean, and these are our tools, for heaven's sakes, right? Doctors know how to use a scalpel. Take the time to master your tools, right? And you're right in the middle of that. What's your take?
Absolutely. I think, what happens, and I think this is one of the habits I think, to break in 2018 is the shiny new toy syndrome. Because everybody's coming out, there's new tools coming out all the time, and I think, sales is such a difficult thing, is that it's natural to gravitate towards something brand new that says it's going to solve all your problems, instead of sitting down and saying at the end of the day, there's a few tools that I really need to be able to do my job properly. And to your point, take your CRM, go figure out how to leverage your CRM, leverage it properly, use it to your advantage, and stop kind of jumping from toy to toy, if you like.
Yep, right on the money. I mean, there are some new tools that are cool, right? But instead of waiting for something like artificial intelligence to threaten your job, we should be using AI to kick butt ourselves, right?
Exactly.
And I mean, there's some fantastic tools out there that do all these things. But I think, there's this sort of acres of diamonds of these tools that we already have sitting right here in front of us. They're just totally going untapped because we're so distracted by the next one.
Exactly, and I think you're 100% right. I think you use the ones that you have, and if something comes along that's interesting, have somebody evaluate it, but don't jump from toy to toy to toy. Rather, learn how to use the ones that are there in front of you. That's good.
Amen.
And can I just
suggest,
John, in some industries, I was just going to say, in some industries, it's quite the opposite. That it's not about embracing the next shiny tool. It's about fearing or not wanting to use the tools they have. And I know we've just mentioned that, but CRM is a big one. Especially in the industries that I coach, they avoid their CRM systems like the plague. And, they're obviously not as user-friendly as Pipeliner and things like that. So whereas their CRM is just this pot of gold sitting in front of them to help them become far more effective salespeople. The only other tool and the other one I'm surprised about is LinkedIn. How I'm still, amazed today that so few people still don't have an electronic business card. And that's what I say LinkedIn is. Talking about 2018, buyers are more sophisticated. So buyers are doing research on you before you show up for a meeting, right? So therefore, and even if you're doing an outreach and leaving voicemails or whatever it may be, no matter how effective your voicemail, sophisticated buyers are doing a quick search on you on LinkedIn. So there's a lot of these great tools that you've got some people who are using way too many and others who are just fearing to use the great ones they have right in front of them.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And at the risk of sounding self-serving, CRM, you can't. A business moving into the present, a business in the present moving into the future, you can't exist without. It's like an accounting system or whatever. You need one, so you might as well, leverage it to its max. Okay, let's flip it. Maybe James, why don't you kick this one off? Let's flip it to the other side. What are some of the things that salespeople should actually stop doing in 2018?
Well, I have a couple pet peeves on this, but not every salesperson is guilty of this. But for heaven's sakes, please stop emailing proposals to clients. I mean, salespeople are really hurting themselves when they do that. They just package up their proposal, send it over, and expect the whole process to happen on autopilot. And it's just it's probably the biggest crime in selling, in my opinion, right? Is this, and what's happening, just to build out a little bit, is they should be scheduling a time to review with the client, even if they're remote, right? Even if you're an SDR, schedule a time to review with the client. And what that does is that gives you a chance to do a mini sale on every little point that is inside your proposal, right? And then it prevents those situations where the clients go radio silent on you. And the reason they're going radio silent on you is because once they get the proposal from you, which you just emailed, they think they have everything from you that they need. And that means that you haven't been offering value. You haven't been adding any value throughout the entire process. And working with you as an individual should be inherently valuable. They should be getting a lot of insight every time they have a conversation with you. And so they're going radio silent on you, then that's a big message to you that you're not adding enough on each individual sale in terms of value. But yeah, if I could just have one crime stop happening forever in sales, that would be the one. Stop emailing your proposal to the client. Schedule something instead. And if you can, do it in person.
Excellent. And Julie, what about you?
Well, James, I love that because that is so true. And a friend who I'm sure you all know as well, Colleen Stanley, who talks about emotional intelligence in sales, and she calls those practice proposals. Because really, that's what you're doing. You're practicing. It's often a waste of time, and I've certainly spent many wasted hours doing that myself. So couldn't agree more. I would say what we need to stop doing is, which I can't believe so many people are still doing, is talking so much about ourselves, right? As Joe and James were saying, we know more about our customers today than we ever have. And they know more about us than they ever have. And they have many ways to find out. And it's very rare that you're going to walk into a meeting and they're going to be, oh, who are you? You know, why are you here? It just doesn't happen. So it's amazing to me that I see so many presentations and demos and meetings start with this company overview that just is a complete waste of those precious first few minutes with a potential buyer. So less about us, more about them, utilizing the information, all this great information that we have in the CRM about our customer, and really customizing that introduction, those first few minutes with them to make them realize you're there for them and not talk so much about yourself and your company.
Excellent. And Joe, what would you add to that?
I can build on both of those. I agree strongly with both of those. You know, brilliant advice from James and Julie. My advice to a lot of salespeople, especially bankers, I say to them, stop selling and start telling. Right? Start telling compelling stories. You've asked the questions, you now understand, better understand your clients' needs, and take the time to truly understand their needs and start telling them compelling stories about the solutions you've offered other clients or solutions that you provided for other clients and their success stories. And that's going to engage your buyer both emotionally and rationally, right? So everybody loves a good story. So stop selling features and benefits. To James' point about proposals, you know, I had a huge smile on my face when he said people email proposals. I know a lot of the salespeople I coach don't even have proposals. They just email term sheets, for goodness sake. So, you know, you're really just rolling the dice there. And very unlikely to get the deal. So if you're going to get to the point where you present, which everyone should be doing, listen to the client, as Julius rightly said, and start telling them compelling stories about how you've solved similar solutions, similar problems for like-minded buyers.
Yeah, excellent. I just send my bank details. Is that wrong?
Routing information.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Good.
Fine.
Oh, good. So here's the one, right? Where do you think the most money's left on the table, and how in 2018 can salespeople grab more of it? Because I think we all agree there's always a lot of money left on the table, and there's got to be ways that we can do better at grabbing it. So, Julie, why don't you start with that one?
Sure. Well, I think when it's left on the table for a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons is that there's simply been no decision made. And that's one of the biggest ways that salespeople lose deals today, is it just simply goes to no decision. They decide to do nothing. And that's typically the result of three things. And if you can eliminate those three things, you have a better chance of getting some type of commitment. And the first is the issue is not important enough to solve. They have not decided to commit the funds, the resources, the time, the money, people necessary to solving it. So unless you have worked with your customer and been able to sort of elevate that business issue to a priority, you're going to be beaten on the drum a long time. The other thing is that perhaps the customer doesn't see the value associated with making the change. So if you haven't helped them define what that value is, put some metrics behind it, you may have a tough time helping them sell it internally. And then the last thing is, what is the date when they would need to have something in place? I mean, some things sound great, but there's no particular time frame that matters to the customer. There's more, well, I need to close this deal by, my first quarter here, and that is not a critical date for your customer. So what is their critical date? What happens if they don't have something in place by a certain time? What benefits will they have if they do? So thinking about those three things can help you sort through those deals where you just don't have enough information. You need to get more discovery about what's important to your customers so that you can really make best use of your time and your customers' time.
Excellent. And what about you, Joe? What do you think? How can you grab more money that's on the table?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of diligently following a sales process. Now, absolutely, there's got to be flexibility throughout the sales process, but with my training, and I know most sales training companies have their own sales process. We have a 9-step process. And, I walk into a room and, a lot of bankers will then roll their eyes, or salespeople roll their eyes and, oh, here we go, this long, laborious sales process. But if you take the time to go through every step of the process, whatever that may be, outcome focus, engagement, rapport building, asking questions, I'm not going to go through all of them, all the way through to, James' specialty, which is, closing, then you'll find that you won't leave money on the table. You'll find that by developing your skills around a process, by not doing what you've always done, which is that I've been flogging that dead horse for a little while now. But my point being is that if you upskill yourself, develop your skills around a process whereby you go through quite a number of steps before you even presenting a solution, you will find that all the issues that Julie just rightly mentioned, you'll have uncovered and you will have solutions for, or you'll be able to better manage. So for me, it's all about making sure that you take the time to develop your skills around a comprehensive sales process and investing time in every step. Stop running or stop jumping to a shortcut to try and close that deal. The last thing I'll add in relation to all that, which goes hand in hand with things you should stop doing and also leaving money on the table. One of the things I always encourage salespeople to do is stop managing your performance by the end result. Stop assessing your performance by how many loans you've closed or how many deposit accounts you've opened. Start managing your performance by the activity that you've identified that you're going to do, and then do that activity well. And if you hit your activity goals and you are effective and efficient at delivering those activity goals, the results will come. The results will be easy. So relatively easy, right? So that's my two issues. Build a process, develop your skills around it, and also then invest the time in managing your activity or reviewing your activity rather than just chasing the end result.
Excellent. And James, what do you think? How can you make sure that you don't leave more money on the table?
Sure. So, well, when it comes to generating additional revenue, or I guess if you want to call it leaving money on the table, there's a couple of areas I can think of. But without a doubt, the most leverageable and the biggest that you can use in any industry, in any space, is leveraging referrals. Referrals are hands down the highest leverage, lowest utilized way of generating revenue, and the statistics are overwhelming. I mean, it slaughters every other channel in terms of revenue generation that's out there by many times over. And you just had Joanne Black on your show, and she's the queen of this, right? Mm-hmm. And if sales truly understood the value and the leverage of referral, it would be absolutely their number one channel for generating opportunities.
Yeah, James, let me ask you, why is it, because this comes up a lot, right? So why is it that it's still such an under-leveraged mechanism?
Well, first of all, you've got skill and will, right? Two things. So one, on the skill side, people think they know how to ask, but they don't, right? They think what you're supposed to do is, who else do you know that can use my stuff, right? Mm-hmm. That's what they ask, and that's not the right way to ask the question. And then you've got the will, which is, do they feel like they've earned it yet, right? And so both of those are factors when it comes to why it is so incredibly underutilized. So I can give, I mean, we don't want to turn this into a whole session on referrals, but the truth is, if you want to get a referral, the best thing is don't make your prospect think. Go in advance and use, like Joe said, go on LinkedIn right? Go look at John Golden and see who he knows and find out which one of those is your target and say, hey, you know what, John, you know Julie, and I've been trying to get in touch with Julie. Would you be willing to give me an introduction? He doesn't have to do any thinking in a scenario like that.
Yeah, brilliant.
Right? And so you've done all the hard work. All you're looking for is the yes. Instead of making them, dig into the ether and try to come up with a list of names, you come up with the list of names in advance. Right. And there's more than one way to do that, but LinkedIn is a really great way of doing that. And then on the motivation side, it is counterintuitive, but the best time to ask for a referral is right after you've closed the deal.
Yeah.
And once you close an opportunity, they're all excited, they're all ready to move forward, and their energy is at an all-time high. This is the actual right time. You don't have to wait a year, 2 years to deliver a result for your client to ask for the next name. They're about as high as they're going to get right now, so the timing is better, and that helps you, right? That helps you move forward at a quicker pace than to have to wait for it. So those are just two really big mistakes on the referral side that are being made.
Excellent. Thanks, James. So this, I think, is the final question for today, but is there a buyer behavior trend salespeople should look out for in 2018? We've heard a lot about buyer behavior changes over the last number of years, and we're all familiar with those, but is there one that has started to evolve more recently, one that's evolving right now? Maybe Joe, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll leverage what James just highlighted. I talked about salespeople or bankers making sure that they focus their attention on their activity. Well, James is spot on. The number one activity I always recommend they focus on is getting referrals. And if you're better and smarter at getting referrals, then the deals will come in. And so where I'm seeing there's a buyer behavior trend that's occurring is that because of the fact that there's so much effort being put into systems like LinkedIn and skills training and whatnot, most of the businesses that people talk to are realizing now that they need to, or the individuals need to have profiles on LinkedIn. Now, one of the buyer behaviors I'm seeing is that people actually do want to give referrals, right? Now you still need to build a relationship, and that relationship could be a buyer-seller relationship. And to James's point, you just closed the deal. But people are recognizing more and more these days that referrals is the number one way to grow your portfolio and to grow your business. So one of the big things now is to knowing that your clients or your prospects are looking for introductions and referrals, then you need to become an advocate. You need to become a networker, an introducer, and you'll find that they will reciprocate by introducing you. And I know the challenge always is that, for example, bankers dealing with accountants and saying to accountants, I'd like, introductions to your clients. The accountants are then looking for introductions to the bank clients. There's other ways that you can create networks, as James rightly pointed out with LinkedIn. That doesn't mean that you're limited to just one or two centers of influence. You can still have a broad network, but today I'm just realizing a lot of buyers, right, whether they're individuals or B2B businesses, they're looking for introductions to help them improve their life or to help them gain more sales themselves. So therefore, don't be afraid to give, and absolutely don't be afraid to ask.
Excellent. Okay, and James, are there any buyer behavior trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, the biggest one is that I think salespeople ought to be looking at is customer avoidance. So the latest data is showing that this is increasing. And you can think of it this way: your prospects are drowning in sales and marketing noise, right? I think the latest data shows that people are exposed to something like 10,000 brand messages a day, and they're coming from every conceivable channel. And because of that, prospects put up barriers, right? They're doing it intentionally to protect their time, right? And rightfully so, because you need focus in order to succeed. So there's barriers there on virtually every single channel, right? So, and they're using all manner of technology, all manner of methods. They block phone calls and voicemails and emails and face-to-face meetings, and every means that we have to reach out to them, there's a protection for. And also, I might add that there are so many channels that it's really challenging to know sometimes which one is the ideal channel to use. with a given target market or prospect. And so those who are limited to only using one or two channels are actually at a serious disadvantage. And I mean, now is maybe a good time to add on to what Julie said earlier is, video is one of these emerging channels at the moment that seems to help us get past this barrier, right? People are willing to watch the video, whereas, an ordinary email is not. So we could probably talk a lot about how to address that, but that is a really big trend that's out there, and it's actively, opposed to the efforts that we are using as salespeople to engage customers.
Perfect. And Julie, what about you? A sales trend that we should be looking out for? A buyer trend, rather.
Yes, this really goes hand in hand with what James was talking about with customer avoidance. And at first I thought you meant salespeople avoiding customers, which a little bit of that too. But I don't think
Maybe
that's what
you need to rename that.
Unfortunate naming. And this has to do with how people are consuming information today. And it's really changing. It's been changing, and it's continuing to evolve, in 2018 and beyond. And it's important to really take a look at that and understand it. We take in information in these small bite-sized chunks. We chat, we watch short video clips, we tweet, we text, we go in and out of information just as long as we have interest. And that interest is shorter, that attention is shorter than it's ever been. So we know that about people. That's part of the science that has been brought forth. But how do we apply that to our customer interactions? Well, I think we have learned a lot about outreach and really delivering these crisp, concise, attention-grabbing emails. And that's a lot of times how we get these meetings with customers. But what I'm finding is people then get the meetings and they go into the meeting and they start just, regurgitating information and talking at someone for half an hour. Mm-hmm. And that just is not aligned with how people take in content today. So it's important to really start looking at how you're communicating with your customer on all fronts, whether it's in video, whether it's an email, whether it's a presentation or a demo, and breaking things down into more manageable chunks that align with people's attention spans. So you're not fighting against people's waning attention, and which is part of that customer, information overload that people are experiencing. So we want to make it easier for them to tune in and not tune out.
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple of years ago, I was doing a presentation and I was doing some research, and I came across this statistic about that we used to have a 15-second attention span, and now it's down to something like 6 seconds, and a goldfish was at 8 seconds, although I don't know how they managed. I don't know how they measured. I really don't know how they measured attention. But anyway, the argument was that we had actually dropped below goldfish in our attention span. So I was thinking, oh my goodness, are we into a period of de-evolution now as we're going backwards? But I totally agree with you. I think attention spans are something that you have to address, and that people have gotten so used to, just like James was saying, with all this noise coming at them, that people have developed these filters and these zone out techniques. And so if you're not getting your message across crisply, you're in a lot of trouble.
Right.
So,
and you can't assume, I'm sorry, that's true with outreach. I mean, very quickly if somebody's not responding, but even if you have people sitting in front of you, just because they're looking at you doesn't mean they're paying attention. Mm-hmm. And I think we make that mistake a lot of times.
Yeah, absolutely. So
to pile onto that, John, just to pile onto what Julie said there, it's really more about focusing on the quality than it is about just, getting in front of them, right? Now you got their attention, but we don't want to train them that when we do get their attention, that what we have to say is a waste of their time. And that takes a little bit of effort to craft our message in a way that's inherently valuable for the customer.
Okay. All right.
Hence why having a target market.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is a last quick point from each of you. So Joe, why don't you go ahead and your last quick insight for today?
Yeah, look, my last quick insight is take time out to document your sales strategy for the year. Stop doing what you've done year over year. Just take time out to develop a strategy and an activity plan, and then develop your skills around that activity plan. Most importantly, seek support. Put a structure around it, hold yourself accountable, but seek support, someone else to hold you accountable and also to help develop your skills in that space.
Excellent. And Julie, your last quick insight, thought?
Yeah, I'd say we talked about a lot of great things that you can do this year and things you can stop doing. I think, we suffer from overwhelm as well. And I think if you can just pick one or two things that you commit to doing and write it down, get some support around it from your manager or do it with a peer, and really, really focus on those, and then just start to layer in some other things that are going to help you be more productive and successful this year. You have a better chance of making that happen.
Excellent. And James?
Just right in line with the other two recommendations, invest in learning and developing yourself. If you'll invest just 5% of your income on personal development, there'll come a day when that 5% will be so big you'll have a hard time spending it. A huge percentage of millionaires are actually salespeople, former salespeople. So I would just say 3-word advice, invest in yourself.
Excellent. And just before you go, James, quickly, how can people contact you?
Probably the best is to reach out via my website, which is puremuir.com, puremuir.com. I am active on LinkedIn, but I've hit the max number of connections, so you're certainly welcome to follow. But I unfortunately can't connect that way. But Twitter's fair game. If you don't mind seeing my personal stuff, you can reach me on Facebook too if you want.
Excellent. And Julie, how can they contact you?
I'm not maxed out on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect. I don't even know what that number is now, James. Wow.
It's 30,000.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I've got a little room. Or you can check out my website, which is Performance Sales and Training, or shoot me an email at julie@actingforsales.com.
Excellent. And Joe, how can they contact you?
Yeah, I'm still open for business on LinkedIn as well. So I'm getting close to the 30,000. That's an extraordinary effort, James. Well done, mate. James shares some terrific stuff. So I would encourage everybody to follow him. And I've just looked you up, Julie, as well. I actually sent you out an invitation to connect, Julie. So connect with me on LinkedIn, or my website is Grow Up Sales, where we help you develop growth strategies and uplifting cultures. So growupsales.com.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Well, listen, thanks everybody for joining today. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM.